Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name's Michelle and this is Keeping Up the Windsors. If you love the royal family just as much as I do, then hit that subscribe button and put on your bell for the notifications. If you'd love to support the channel, you can over on Ko-fi. The link is in the description below. But what are we going to be talking about today, royal community? I am going to be reviewing Meghan's episode 1 of Archetypes Spotify podcast. Now, in this episode, she's with her friend Serena Williams, and I'm going to be breaking down the topic of ambition, which is exactly what they were talking about in this podcast episode. Have you listened to the episode? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know what you thought about it as well. So, let's get to it. Okay, let's move on to the pros. What did I love about this podcast? I loved that the production was, it was chef's kiss. It was absolutely amazing. There's a moment within the interview where she's on the phone to Serena, and it just sounds like she's in a studio talking to Serena. The sound is excellent. You can tell there's been a lot of marketing, lots of production. We've seen the advert for Archetypes where Meghan sits down on the seat, and the production is just lush. It's just beautiful. She looks amazing in it. I think like they've got the feel of the podcast absolutely perfect. You can tell there's a lot of money being thrown at this. There's so much time that goes into editing, and I really wanted to give lots and lots of kudos to that. This is being excellently produced. And also, I just love Meghan's voice. That kind of actress vibe really comes along in this. To be honest, I think this is one of the going into one of the cons, so I'll kind of leave that a little bit later. But her voice is just, I find it quite hypnotic. I think she's got a very great voice for podcasts, actually. And she's got just that enough vocal fry that it doesn't become annoying. But I really enjoyed the way it made me feel. It felt comforting and safe, and like I was listening in to two girls having a conversation, which is, I think, what the vibe they were going for. And I think they hit the mark there. So tick, well done to Archetypes. Another pro is I absolutely love the actual conversation matter, the subject matter that Meghan has chosen for the umbrella of Archetypes, which is Archetypes. The words we use to, society uses, or we may potentially use to label ourselves, and how detrimental that can be for our own successes, for our own happiness and self-worth. And I really loved the subject matter, and I think it's something, even if you're not a woman, it does seem very woman-based, but I even think anyone can relate to that, being labelled something, being told you're something that you know that you're not, and how maybe that could affect you moving forward, and the action that you take in your life. So I really loved the subject matter, and I was really intrigued when I first pressed play as to how this was going to be tackled. So the first episode is all about ambition, and I loved how Serena, the GOAT of women's tennis, is just, you have to be ambitious to get to that point. And I have to say, I'm a very ambitious woman myself, so I saw a lot of the themes coming up. But the ambition side of things, you do get labelled quite a lot as a woman if you are ambitious. But the first part of the podcast really handled ambition well. I love that Meghan brought in an expert. They just spoke about it and how that can affect you. And I love that. I actually wish she would bring in more experts into the conversation, because the second part of the podcast fell out of the realm of ambition, and it was just like Serena and Meghan were just having a conversation about their friendship and also about Serena's future, which is fine. But I think to have the umbrella of ambition as being the first archetype label, then I think the theme, that thread of ambition, should have been woven throughout the whole of the podcast. It might not take away from other people's enjoyment, but for me, it felt like we've talked about ambition now, right, what else are we going to talk about? And I think it should have been the whole of the episode. I know that Con is coming into the pro section, but I thought I'd just interlink that because it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? I loved that she chose ambition for the first episode. I think it was very amply chosen because a lot of people have seen Meghan as being ambitious, and labelled her and seen her in different ways because of that. So let's move on then to another pro. A pro also is Meghan is an excellent speaker. Excellent speaker. And I'm sure some of the bits were scripted, but the way in which she speaks is excellent. And I cannot take that away from her. She's an excellent speaker. For someone who's a presentation coach, I can see for her that it just comes so naturally. So I think that also carried the weight for the podcast for me, that I didn't feel bored. I liked each of the sections coming in and how it was connected and all the podcasts put together. I absolutely loved the 3-word segment right at the end. And this is a part where Meghan asks whoever she's interviewing 3 words to describe her like child self, and then 3 words she describe her adult self. And I really love this segment because you get a snapshot into that person and what they believed about themselves at that age, and also what they believe about themselves now. And also think about it yourself, like what 3 words would you describe about yourself as a child, and would they be the same words you describe yourself as the person you are now? So it was a bit thought-provoking, and I really enjoyed that. I would have liked Meghan to have done hers, and maybe she will in the future, but it was interesting to hear Serena's 3 words. And I'm going to leave it with the last pro, and that is that I actually enjoyed it. And I know I should be saying this right at the end, but I thought I'd just say this pro now because the cons are coming. But I did actually enjoy it as a podcast. Okay, that's enough with the pros. Let's get on to the cons. What did I think about it? And, on here, we're going to give you a balanced approach. She is definitely using this podcast as a way of getting her voice out there and debunking some of the untruths. Some people will say they're truths, some people say they aren't untruths. I think it's her way of having her voice and dampening some of the hearsay that is about her and her character. We've had Tom Bower's book, Revenge. We've had that book out recently where Tom Bower has put into question Serena and Meghan's friendship. So it's interesting that I think she used the word friendship and with Serena so many times in this podcast. In the end I was like, I get it, you're friends, like it's like, don't protest too much. I know that this is being put into question, so in a way you've had to prove yourself, but I'm here to talk about archetypes and ambition. I'm not here for you to debunk every wrong thing that's ever been said about you. So I guess in a way that is a con. I just felt like, okay, move on now. Another con for me is bringing Harry and Archie onto the podcast. I wanted this to be just hers and hers alone. And I just don't think it was needed. I think it was there for her fans, because her fans want to hear Archie, they want to hear Harry. But I just think it was unnecessary. It just didn't need to be done. And that's just a personal preference, I have to say, because she can do whatever she wants on her own podcast, and I completely respect that. But for me, I don't know, it just felt a bit jarring, a bit out of place. It's interesting that Harry was just like, oh, we haven't seen you for a while, but then she's protesting that she sees and he speaks to Serena all the time. So it was a bit of a disjointed way, I guess. So yeah, that was one of the cons. Another con is she brought up the story about being in South Africa and a heater in Archie's room catching on fire or an accident. The reason this is a con is because just before that, Serena had been very vulnerable and vocal in expressing that there was a moment where Serena's daughter broke her wrist in Serena's care, and she just felt absolutely mortified. And she explained that it was just before a big match, and how as a mother, like, her protective instinct came in and she felt so guilty. And that was such a vulnerable story to tell, and it was so raw and real. And then Meghan went on to tell this story of Archie. She explained that Archie was with his nanny and at this housing unit, which we've now realised is the High Commissioner's home in South Africa. It's just the most beautiful place. And she called it a housing unit, which I find really strange. But she talked about this issue, if that makes sense, that she wasn't there with Archie when he potentially could have died. He was nowhere in the room. He was nowhere near the room. Yes, potentially he would have been put down for a nap, But for me, it just felt really disingenuous as a friend, for your friend to give you such an important, vulnerable, experience of motherhood, and then for you to kind of chime in with this, and it just felt like a way of you bringing in a situation that will completely give a jab to the royal family because her duty had to come before her son. I don't know. It felt weird to me. It just felt really inauthentic. And how could you do that to your friend? Like, try and trump her with a story that's not even a story? I know everyone experiences traumatic experiences in very different ways. And I know that would have been like, oh my goodness me, I can't believe that could have happened. Do you know, the thing that felt really disingenuous to me is that Serena was really surprised when Meghan was telling her about Archie's heater in this nursery. She was like, oh, really? Like, for somebody who is a really close friend, wouldn't that be a story that you would tell because it had such an emotional reaction to you on that day? It felt really weird to me that Serena didn't know that. What did you think? I mean, am I just really overreacting here? And I think just following on from that, I believe this podcast is going to be a vehicle for Meghan to rewrite her story. And what I mean by that is people are going to say certain things about her and she's going to say, no, this is my truth. And I think that's what we got from the Spotify promo. It was her saying, this is my truth. I'm going to use this platform to debunk everything that everyone else is saying, because you don't know me. You don't know the real me, but this podcast will bring that out. I don't think I felt like I did know the real Meghan actually during this. I felt like I knew the actress Meghan. We haven't actually got to the bare bones of Meghan and who she actually is yet. So yeah, I think this kind of goes against what I said about Meghan being an excellent speaker, because of course you would be a speaker, an excellent speaker, if you were acting it or if you were just reading it as someone like a voiceover. And I feel like some parts of it was that, like some parts of it was voiceover-ish. And I don't know. I'm going to reserve that thought until the end of the 12 episodes, because at the moment it feels very inauthentic at the moment. And I don't mean that as in I think she's lying. I just think she's got the Meghan actress cap, the Meghan I'm doing a podcast, let me do a voiceover cap on. And I hope that as we go along she'll get a bit more comfortable and the real Meghan will come out. I think that's the point about this podcast. Like, I could see myself with her, if that makes sense. She was very relatable, but I don't know whether that was her, Meghan, or that was her acting relatable. So time will tell with this whether that's a pro or a con or not. But I would love for it to be a little less, because some of my pros are becoming cons now. I love the production, but I think maybe we need to feel it a little bit more raw. This is another con. There were times where she spoke over Serena a lot, and actually what Serena was saying was way more interesting than what Meghan chimed in to say. And that's not me being anti-Meghan. That was me saying, oh my god, I'm really interested in what Serena said, and now you've interrupted her. So I think as she goes along, as she interviews more people, she will get better at that. Again, I'm giving her a little bit of leeway because it is the first episode. And my biggest con, my biggest no-no for this podcast is she talked about how archetypes are affected by sexism and also racism, but she didn't bring up classism. And classism is massive. We do run on a class system here in the UK, and she is at the top echelons of that class system. So for her not to address that, it doesn't matter how much ambition you have. If you do not have the money to make it happen, it is a dream. And it's something that I hope in other podcasts she does address. But I think in a way she can't address it because it'll be like the Trojan horse. It will start a war. Because in talking about classism, she has to address her own climbing of the social ladder. And let's put it this way. I think it wasn't addressed because they're two multi-millionaires having a conversation about ambition and not addressing the fact that there are many, many people who they're standing on the shoulders of in order to be where they are. And I just wanted them to just acknowledge that. And not just that, but as women, acknowledge the men also that helped you to get where you are. So that is my review of Meghan's first episode of Archetypes. Taking everything into consideration, I did really like it. I actually think that I liked it more because the production was just so good. I've heard actually that other people have said that's an hour wasted of my life. I didn't think that at all. I thought that it was a good approach to bringing up the subject matter of ambition, but I think it just lacked in other areas that would have made that episode so full and so rich if they would have gone into every little aspect of things. For instance, we talk about classism, but we also talk about the fact that they do have nannies in their life to look after their children. Other mothers, other fathers in this world do not have that. And it was just never addressed. I am super excited for episode 2 because Meghan is talking to Mariah Carey, one of my favourites. I hope she has a little sing. She did actually have a little sing at the end of this episode 1 when she was introducing Mariah, and I actually thought that was Meghan singing. I was like, is Meghan singing? I was like, oh no, that's Mariah Carey. My bad. Anyway, I'm really, really excited to hear Mariah's take on whatever archetype they're going to choose for episode 2. I'm really excited to hear what she's got to say, and also the dynamic between Meghan and Mariah. How is that going to pan out? So yeah, I guess in a way I am very intrigued about episode 2. So that is my review of Archetypes. What did you think? Is there anything you disagree with? Let me know in the comments below. Always be respectful. You're completely able to have your opinion here on Keeping Up with the Windsors, but just be respectful. It's not about you're right, you're wrong, I said this, he said that. It's just about having an opinion, and that's completely fine. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, being part of the royal community on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell as well, and also support the channel over on Ko-fi. The link is in the description below. My name is Michelle. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in our next video.